We'll call it Thursday, April 16th work session to order. First item on the agenda would be review of the April 2nd work session notes. Any changes?
No change.
Stand as written. Next item on the agenda, North Vine Street Corridor Project Authority to award contract and commitment of funds. Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Commissioners. Since December 2015, City staff has been working on the development of a project to improve Vine Street from 32nd Street to the 41st and Mopar intersection. The project will improve pavement, curb and gutter, sidewalk, storm sewer, water mains, signage, pavement markings, street lighting, and pedestrian signals associated with the reconstruction of approximately 3,400 linear feet of Vine Street. The project includes 4 roundabouts, one at the intersection of 32nd and 33rd Street, a second at the intersection of 37th Street, a third at the eastbound I-70 ramps, and the fourth at the intersection of 41st and Mopar. The project will also reconstruct the west frontage road, connect West 37th Street to Skyline Drive, extend Skyline Drive to 41st Street, and upgrade pedestrian crossings. Construction will begin in May and run through 2 construction seasons, with completion occurring in the fall of 2021. Bids were opened on March 25th at KDOT in Topeka. All bids were reviewed by KDOT, the city's engineering consultant, and city staff. The low bid is higher than both the engineer's estimate of $8.4 million and the KDOT estimate of $8.1. The high bids are mainly attributed to the current economic situation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The city is able to cover the higher than estimated cost of construction and believe it is best to accept a low bid and move forward with the project. As detailed in the project summary sheet from KDOT, the bid from Smoky Hill, combined with the $1.2 million for construction engineering, totals $13.1 million. Subtracting out the $6 million build grant leaves the city's share at $7.1 million. Under an agreement between KDOT and the city executed in February, KDOT will be administering the construction of the project. KDOT has provided a resolution authorizing the award of the construction contract to Smoky Hill Construction and committing city funds for the project, which are to be paid to KDOT by May 14th. Using the city's share in the build grant funds, KDOT will make payments to the contractor as the project progresses. After construction, if there are any change orders or variations in cost, KDOT will audit the project and credit the city any overpayment or bill the city any additional amount due. So the options you have tonight, the options are to adopt the resolution authorizing KDOT to award the bid to Smoky Hill Construction and commit the city funds for the project, direct staff to another option, or do nothing. And the action requested for next week, if you move this on, is on the screen.
I move we authorize the mayor to sign the resolution.
This is work session.
Oh, gosh, we're in a work session. Sorry.
I know you're excited.
I was prepared.
But you can comment.
I don't have any comments.
Anybody have any comments or anything on this?
Yes, I'll open with my comments. I certainly, as the other commissioners I know, wrestled with different options that are available that were presented to us. Toby did his job and offered us what we could look at as options. We got feedback from the community, good and bad. I've reached out to a few people as well to kind of get some insight, and I paced back and forth in my own basement, arguing with myself the last few nights and arguing with my wife on what I
Don't argue with her.
What I felt was going to be an option I would be comfortable with. So I took the liberty to basically write my thoughts down. I didn't want to stumble over myself as I presented my thoughts, and I wanted to make it's a work session, so I figured I might as well just lay them out there and let it be. but I certainly don't intend to read this as grandstanding to my fellow commissioners. But with that, it is my position that we should, at a minimum, reject the bids and do a rebid this fall. I can't reconcile accepting bids 30% higher than estimates without having a firmer understanding of where the surprise increases have come. For 5 years, we've had commissioners, city departments, employees, architects, engineers, KDOT, and even federal people looking in and analyzing this project, and simply it's not acceptable to me at this time. We should be caught by this big of a surprise and not have a firmer understanding of how much this should have cost. If we look back 5 years ago, the original intent of the project was the city to take care of its own by correcting the 32nd, 33rd Street interchange and making a better connection at 41st Street. The federal government deciding to put their 2 cents in worth on the project, in this case $6 million worth of those cents, this project has ballooned to where we are today. We've been thrown curveball after curveball, and I think there's some credibility to people who are a little bit tired of the surprises. If we would have stuck to the original plan of taking care of our own, we wouldn't really be here in this position, as the roundabouts that we'd set out to do would probably already be in place. Which gives us the opportunity to not worry about delaying it further, to look at other bid opportunities, because if we've been delaying this for years already. If the short timeline of accepting bids this month is part of the problem in starting construction in 2 months where we got these higher bids, I believe stretching that timeline out where we do bids in the fall, starting construction next year, would give us an opportunity to potentially get better bids. I believe the city is in a position of strength and we should use it instead of just boring ahead because we can afford it. Step back and let it be known that we have the resources. We're not just going to be placated because of economic uncertainty to move forward. My belief as well, in these times of economic uncertainty, we will get further competitive bids in the fall as construction companies are looking for bids to keep themselves busy. I think that's part of the reason we saw high bids on these estimates, is because they factored in a margin of cost due to the uncertainty of these economics, and then they needed to keep themselves afloat going into next year if this uncertainty extends. We should not let that be used against us. Reminds me of the adage, a fool and their money are soon parted. Hayes has been fiscally strong for years, and I don't see why we just have to say, okay, let's roll the dice this time. We need to use that strength to go back and say we want better ideas of why the bids came in higher. I'm not afraid of the boogeyman of, well, what if we go back and the bids come back the same or higher in 6 months? Because we don't know. But the counter to that is simply, what if the bids come in lower? What if we look at a few alternatives to help our cause? What if we take the opportunity to look for further funding? The build grants came out of the last recession. The federal government has already shown they're going to pour money into projects, so it's my thought process simply that the odds are in our favor that if we don't have a project already going on and we wait to get the project going, additional funding will come available. But we shouldn't really worry about what could be. We can only really talk about what is. And what is are the estimates have come in 30% higher, either because we flat got the estimates wrong all along or because of the economic uncertainty. But without being able to point firmly at one or the other, in knowing what the cost should be, it is again my position to reject the bids at a minimum. Rebid in the fall so we have an understanding of what has led to these prices today and give us time to fully work through funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I had one question for, I guess, staff. Do you or any staff have any current concerns with design? Were there anything that, excuse me, anything that popped up in the design process where it just made you kind of take a step as why are we doing it this way?
Toby, Dougherty, City Manager. Meaning, are we comfortable with the current design?
Yes. Is there anything that's making us second guess any part of the design?
No, we're very comfortable with the design. We think it's a good design. I think if we were uncomfortable with the design, we would have flushed that out before we brought it to you to let KDOT take it out to bid.
I just have a few comments. This really is a really difficult decision. Anybody that thinks it's easy to sit up here and spend this kind of citizens' money, Given the state of the economy with the coronavirus pandemic, it's even more difficult. Having said that, I'm still in favor of moving forward with the project. When I ran for this seat on the City Commission, I was committed to improving Vine Street corridor, both for safety and for economic sustainability as we look to the future of our community, the next 25 years and beyond. It is not that I'm pro-roundabouts, but I am pro-sustainable economic growth. The current North Vine corridor, as is designed, is the most viable solution, in my opinion, and the opinions of our staff, which I take very seriously. The current situation on the North Vine corridor is dangerous. We can all agree on that. As much as that, the current configuration is detrimental to development of this corridor. We see the former Ambassador Hotel property sitting vacant due in no small part to ingress and egress. That is only one example. The roundabout on the north side of the interstate will be very beneficial for business there. The new convention center, along with existing restaurants and more to come, will benefit from that change. Exiting the Home Depot property will no longer require one to go blocks out of the way in order to turn left onto Vine Street. The roundabout at 32nd, 33rd is very necessary from a safety standpoint, again, in my opinion. Important to my decision is the fact that we will do this phenomenal improvement with no tax increase to our citizens. We have identified how to pay for it, even in the new dollar figure, and for that I thank our staff and their ability to budget not only for today but for the future. I will be voting to move this forward and vote in favor of it next week.
You have anything wrong? I, along with Commissioner Berges, have thought about this many times in the last couple days, and for the I'm trying to be nice, for the people that comment on Hayes Daily and Hayes Post. Yes, I read every single one of your comments last night. You know, in this environment, I have lots of extra time on my hands. So last night, after about, I think it was a 2-hour meeting last May 23rd, we had this discussion with all the residents on 37th Street. I watched the whole meeting last night, and you know, and I, to this day, I appreciate all those people that, you know, brought their comments to us, suggestions. Some of them were just, you know, and I'm not trying to blame anybody. John Brown, I respect what you do. You've been in this business a lot longer than I ever have been. And, you know, we've asked you questions. You brought us back many different things along with, you know, the city manager. And I think we're doing the right thing, not only for now, but for the future of Hayes. We all had a gentleman email us about raising their taxes and said, well, you guys just voted, or he had replied to me about raising their taxes. You know, the county was successful in raising the sales tax, and it will go into effect October, is that correct? Somewhere in that area. So in October, we will go from 8.25 to 8.75. And the city is not raising taxes. We raised the bed tax a year ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And we've had really good returns on that. And we believe, I mean, it is completely unacceptable to me to be this much over, 30% over. But in the past, I want to say when we did Allen Street 2 years ago, it came $1 million underestimate. Am I correct on that?
I don't know if it was $1 million. It was several
quite a bit.
100,000. 8th Street was also several 100,000 underestimate.
And so we were able to do many other projects because we saved money. And we've had, in my time, this, I think maybe a couple's been over, but very seldom are we over more than just a few percent on estimates. I mean, I can't point why, and I hope this doesn't continue. I mean, we've done a lot of redevelopment in this community of streets, and they've come into budget, and we continually to spend more to update our streets, and I think we got the best streets in Kansas personally. And this is a struggle for everybody. I truly believe this is going to be better. It's not going to be better next year, 2 years from now, but 10 years down the road, when Hayes continues to grow like I know it will, with the new hotels, the new truck stop, the new businesses coming in. We know for a fact one business along this corridor is actually going to redo their business and have an expansion, we believe. One business across the street has already redone their whole business. So I don't think people would be spending money on it if they thought this was all bad for their business. And we all pay taxes in this town, and I think we all very much care about what we pay in taxes. And this has probably been one of the hardest things for me. I told you guys this a year ago when the 37th Street people were here. I bet I can name 10 people out there that are very good friends of mine. And it's hard to make decisions when it affects people that you really care a lot about. I stand by my, what I've said many times. I absolutely 100% disagree with the connection to 37th Street. But I 100% agree with doing the roundabouts. I think it's going to be better for our community, and I hope that we have the votes to pass this on. That's all I have to say.
Move it on.
Moving on. Moving on. Okay. Moving on. Next item on the agenda, North Vine Street Corridor Project, Construction Engineering Services.
As mentioned during the previous agenda item, the North Vine Street Corridor project is funded in part by a build grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation and is being administered through KDOT. As such, the project needs to be inspected by an engineering firm pre-qualified by KDOT to inspect state and federal projects. Firms on KDOT's pre-qualified list were solicited, and Kirkham Michael Engineers was the only firm that submitted a proposal. That proposal was reviewed by city staff, and Kirkham Michael was found to be qualified to accomplish the required services. Kirkham Michael's initial scope and fee submittal was in the amount of $1.6 million. That proposal was reviewed by city and by KDOT staff and rejected. Subsequently, a revised scope and fee was negotiated in the amount of $1.2 million, which is in line with typical construction engineering fees for similar projects at slightly more than 10% of the construction cost. The work estimate form in your packets details the scope and fee for Kirkham Michael to provide construction engineering inspection for this project. Those services will occur over 2 construction seasons from May 2020 through substantial completion in November 2021 and until the final project closeout by May of 2022. Kirkham Michael will be working under an existing contract that they have with KDOT for on-call inspection services, and KDOT will make direct payments to Kirkham Michael for said services as they occur. The $1,246,225 cost for construction engineering services is included in the $7.1 million due to KDOT, as discussed in the previous agenda item regarding the authority to award a contract and the commitment of city funds. So your options are to authorize the city manager to sign the work estimate form, direct staff to another option, or do nothing. And the action requested next week, should you move this on, is on the screen.
John, on engineering, do they report directly to KDOT, or do we get any reports from them on their inspection services as they go along? I mean, especially if they see something that is not correct, do they report to KDOT, or do they report to us?
They're working for KDOT, and they report to KDOT. However, in the past, like the most recent project that was similar in nature in terms of that was 41st Street, so we had federal funds on that. I was very much involved in that, was copied on all the correspondence that went to KDOT. So I've got my pulse. I will have my pulse on this project as it goes along. I'll be involved in all of the weekly construction meetings and all the correspondence that occurs. So we'll be but they do work directly for KDOT. They do report to KDOT, but I'm involved in that process.
So if there is a problem, then KDOT will handle it.
Right.
Thank you.
Shaun, were you surprised that we only had one bid on that?
I was a little bit at first. There were about 10 or 12 firms that were pre-qualified to do this. And when we only got one back, I started calling around, talking to some of the other firms. And, some of the smaller firms like Penco here, they're on that list, but it's just too big of a project for them. Some of the other ones mentioned, that they already had commitments, in lined up already for that. I think one of them even mentioned, well, Kirkham Michael's, we knew Kirkham Michael was presenting, and they're the best ones for the job. Logical. We didn't even bother.
That's nice to hear.
But that's kind of how it was. So they were aware, and like I said, there were about 10 or 12, and Kirkham Michael was probably the logical one to do the job anyway, and that's kind of how it panned out.
do have a question that kind of pertains to the previous one. Toby, if you could help me out on this. I've had people contact me the last few days about, why don't we just save money and just do the one at 32nd and 33rd? And I know that was kind of our original. We had looked at that, but there was other issues that came by just doing that one. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Toby, on why it would not be the best interest of the community to do just the 32nd, 33rd roundabouts?
If you just did the 32nd, 33rd roundabout, you would be eliminating the inconvenience of having to wait through a six-legged traffic signal, with the different legs that have to go through there. And then you could possibly eliminate the safety concerns with the frontage road that comes between the Pheasant Run and Hayes Chevrolet. But if you just did that without any improvements further up in the corridor, you're creating more problems further up in the corridor. So right now you have significant congestion points and accident points at 35th and 37th Street with the way the traffic flows through there, and there's a lot of left-hand turning movements coming out of that. And so there are a lot of people, locals, that have figured out the back way into those two areas, utilizing that frontage road. So if you eliminate the frontage road, you drive all of that traffic to 35th and 37th Streets, which lends the congestion. So it creates more accident. There's, I know the city commission turned down a grant back in the late 90s to realign the intersection. And I'm not sure if that was part of their calculation or not. I know there was a reluctance to use condemnation wholesale in the area too, which that would have taken a lot of condemnation to make that happen. I'm not talking just condemnation to take a sliver of property. I'm talking about taking properties and removing them. And but I think when we started looking at it internally, all the focus is on 32nd, 33rd Street, but it's the problems up in the corridor. So that's why we started looking at the corridor itself instead of just 32nd, 33rd Street, and trying to figure out the solutions that match the corridor. So that's the first answer to your question is you're not really solving the problems of the corridor. You're not making the Ambassador property more viable. The properties on the east side of Vine on 37th Street, you're actually making them less viable because you're creating more congestion and choke points and accident points there. As far as like the bill grant monies, if we change the scope of the project that significantly, we would lose the bill grant monies. We had when we applied for the bill grant, we had the three roundabouts. We added the half feature to accommodate eastbound on and off ramp traffic as part of the process, but we had a corridor that we'd applied monies for. So I'm pretty sure the Federal Highway Administration would deem that as a significant modification to what we'd agreed to, and we'd probably lose those monies.
So another question, well, do you guys have anything else to ask? I don't want to take up the whole.
Oh, the only question that I had, I guess kind of going on this, is if we were to change anything with it, the monies that have the monies been distributed to the people we bought the right-of-way acquisition from? Those
Yes.
have been given to those people. Right?
We actually have title to those properties, yes.
So if we say we're done with it, are we just out that money then?
Yeah,
And we
they're not
still-
selling
and we
back
still
to us.
and we
Not gonna give it
well,
back?
right. But I mean, so we would own those right-of-ways for nothing.
Yes. Yeah, we would own them, and we have no means to go back and collect that money. Now, we could market it for sale, but a lot of it's just slivers here and there, and the only tangible value is to the adjacent property owner. So they're not going to give us hardly anything for it. In most cases, they're probably not going to give us what we gave them for it.
And every single person that we had talked to with these agreements, we didn't have to go through any eminent domain with anyone. Everyone agreed to the right-of-way acquisition.
Right. The commission did start the process to let itself use eminent domain. So before the city commission uses eminent domain, they have to declare it's their intent to possibly use eminent domain. The city commission did that because of a timeline, because the property acquisition had to take place by a certain deadline so we could get the engineering plans so we can move forward. But eminent domain, we did not have to exercise eminent domain on any of the property owners. It was all voluntary transactions.
So Toby, another question I have is, a lot of people are like, well, how does the city of Hayes just have that money laying around to take care of this for, 30% increase? how will we handle that? I mean, I know how we'll do it, but can you explain to how we will take care of that, the difference?
When the city commission first entertained this project, it was going to be in-house, the 3 roundabouts, and we were going to pay for it ourselves. So we had actually started talking about this back in, I think, 2015. We started drawing circles in the corridor, just trying to figure out what might work. At one point, we reached a point where we figured out that, we may be onto something. We went to KDOT. KDOT granted us a little bit of money. We cost shared in engineering services and had engineers draw stuff on a map. And at one point, we all stepped back and said, we think we could be onto something. So at that point, we went to the governing body. I think we even talked to Planning Commission. We talked about it at public meetings and said, we think we're onto something. We want to get an engineer on board, and we have a way we think we can pay for it based off of our cost estimate. And so the initial project, the initial $7.6 million that we thought it was going to be a project, a smaller project, was something that we thought we could afford with the transient guest tax and then with the utilization of water and sewer and stormwater to pay their respective shares. It was something that we could afford to do in-house. After we got the engineer on board, after we started moving forward the project, we become aware of the build grant. We made the application. We received notification of award. That's when the other feature was added after that, the half roundabout to accommodate that traffic. And so, yes, it is overestimate, significantly overestimate. I'm not going to try to downplay that at all. But the reality is, going into this project, the city was prepared to spend X amount of dollars on this project, and what that means now is you're spending X amount of dollars on this project. You're also getting a bigger scope of the project too.
Thank you. Anything else?
My comment is, as far as this goes, I didn't write out a big argument to it. I will express my irritation with this. It comes a little bit from my financial. If the going rate is 10%, it just irritates me that basically they used the art of the deal. They came in at a high rate. We negotiated it down to what it probably should be anyway. We feel like we got a deal out of it. It irritates me that Hayes is being treated this way right now with these 2 projects. It feels like we're fighting tooth and nail a little bit as people they know. I just feel this strongly. Hayes is in a good financial position, and it feels like we're being a little bit taken advantage of. So from that standpoint, this just irritates me from that standpoint that we had to negotiate down. If I did that as a financial advisor, I would not have much business if I tried to skim out a little bit more and said, well, we'll get it a little bit better rate, and then they found out, well, that's the going rate. So I just wanted to express that irritation.
I actually think I agree with you. We kind of brag that we are in great financial shape, and we've been like that for many years. You almost wonder if we are being taken advantage of because we're in good shape, that, they can afford it, and that's, but then going back, how many times have we had stuff that's come quite a bit underestimate, but, it kind of goes both ways there, but I do happen to agree with you on that. So. Moving on. That on? No vote this week. Other items for discussion. Commissioner Melick?
Once again, just like last week, keep following the CDC's guidelines, state guidelines, and we're going to get through this.
Yeah, the same. Follow the guidelines. It's becoming more worrisome all the time. I have a son with Down syndrome. He's got issues with his immunity system, so it bothers me. It worries me.
Sure.
So please follow the guidelines. Also, this completely off. If you got your stimulus checks or whatever, certainly from a financial standpoint, be wise with it. But I'd also encourage support. If you do a little bit more support and spending on the local businesses here in town, if there's a local charity, I'd also ask, help out a little bit more. This is certainly stretching the dollars. I think we're finding out a little bit goes a long way right now. So that's my encouragement right now.
Mr. Ritter?
I agree with what both of you said. KDHE, CDC, and of course with the stimulus check, that's a good idea too.
Or go buy a big screen TV.
Yeah, go buy a big.
Oh shoot!
As long as it's here in Hayes. Well, this roundabout thing has been, I guess, a whirlwind. being new. This project started when I was almost fresh out of high school, so it's a it's an interesting take for sure. But I just wanted to let everybody know that I believe every single one of us that's up here is looking at this as seriously as humanly possible. We're getting as much information every single day from as many different sources and everybody that we possibly can. I've gone back and watched commission meetings. I prop it up on my phone around my house and listen and watch, and I watched the May 23rd one like Shaun did. Listen to the 37th Street people. I love when people actually can bring us some ideas. If you got an idea, I mean, I'm happy to hear it. Absolutely. If you got something, we'll see if it works and work with you, and that's what we're here for. I just want everybody to know that we're actually looking at it. We're doing the best we can, and I think all of us are going to make the decision we believe is best for the city of Hayes in the end. I don't think anybody up here is just doing it to do it. We truly believe either it's good or bad for our community on how we vote.
I think that's very well said. And the other thing I want to remind us all, this isn't the first design we looked at or first solution for this project. We've been looking for solutions for the North Vine project for a long time. You know, is there something better out there? I'm sure there probably is somewhere, and somebody's got the greatest idea. But this is the best idea that, in my opinion, that has been brought forward. I hate like heck that we're paying more money for it, but I still strongly believe that it's the right thing to do. The safety is a big thing, but the economic impact of what's going to happen when that's done, I think is going to be huge. I also want to thank everybody for staying inside, and I do want to congratulate this community because I do get out every now and then, run to the grocery store or to the post office, and there's nobody out. You never, the streets are just dead. So I do appreciate that people are staying inside, and I agree with Commissioner Malik. We will get through this.
I would agree. And I, as Commissioner Berges saying, support the small business. And I will say, guys, as a small business owner, we should be very proud how people have supported us small business. I mean, people are going out of their way. I can't tell you how many times, and to be honest, as a business owner, you almost feel uncomfortable when people say, well, I want to make sure I take care of you guys, and we all need to be taken care of. Whether you're a big business, small business, we're all in this together. But people have just been unbelievable to everybody. And for me, the bankers in this town that are working tirelessly to try to get these small business people loans, some are getting them, some are still waiting, some are frustrated, but I believe it's going to happen, and it's going to help get us going once this is over with. I was reading today, people were frustrated, the stay-at-home orders, and I own a business, and we have live events every weekend, and we're packed, and that's huge for my revenue. But I get it. It makes sense to stay home. I don't want my family to be sick. I don't want my parents to be sick. And I don't want your kids to be sick, and I just, people are, I didn't say that. But, we just do what you're doing. People are doing the right thing, and for the businesses, and many of us are doing it, that are offering carry out or, to where we drop it off at somebody's porch where, you don't have any contact. People in this community are, we're what we are is because how we adapt to stuff, and this is unprecedented. I hope to God I never see something like this again. And people were saying we shouldn't do the roundabouts because of what this is going. One reason I don't want to delay it is because say we delay it another year and we start coming back. To me, it's almost like going to be like pouring salt in the wound because I don't feel like it can ever get this bad. I hope to God it never gets this bad again. But I don't know, and I just hope people keep being smart and do what you can, and we will get through this. And thank you, everybody. I want to say Hayes Post and Hayes Daily for bringing all this attention, getting people involved, understanding what's going on. I've had people contact me this week that didn't contact me last year. They're just asking questions, and I think people are at home more, so they have time to actually pay attention, which that's okay. That's our job to take those calls, and whether we agree or disagree, I believe all five of us are still going to continue to listen and do our best for our community. So we're adjourned.